When I was 18, the doctor told me I was going to lose my sight very slowly. And the thing that he didn't tell me was that going blind was going to be extremely boring. There's nothing to look at. So I started this project. In my mind, I called it Nothing to See Here. And I started going around the world for sensory experiences other than sightseeing. So it's like going around with a really simple question, like, if you had to travel somewhere in the world just to taste something, what would you go taste? Or what is the Eiffel Tower of smells? And that's how my research took me to discover this festival in a place called Sweetwater, Texas, where every March, the farmers gather together in a little rodeo, and they gather up, on average over 3 days, 1.5 tons of diamondback rattlesnakes from the fields to protect the cattle. And they make a little festival out of this whole thing. And as you can imagine, I thought, that's a sound probably worth traveling for. It's probably the Grand Canyon of sounds, 1.5 tons of rattlesnakes. And the only downside is 1.5 tons of rattlesnakes. So I conscribed my brother Michael to go down with me because he was the only person ridiculous enough to go with me, and he spells his name M-Y-K-O-L, like he's that kind of guy. And so we fly to Texas, and we get to Abilene, and we drive to Sweetwater. And don't get me wrong, I was utterly terrified of what we were going to go do on this rattlesnake hunt. But at the same time, my brother and I love cowboys. We love everything cowboy. And my brother was telling me that the landscape was dotted with like turquoise bolo ties. And I rolled down the window and I can smell horse sweat, and there's scrub grass, and it's the best. There's cowboys everywhere. The older, the leatherier, the better, right? And I'm smelling all this horse sweat and scrub grass as we're driving around, and there's billboards for Skeet's all-you-can-eat brisket and Tom's all-you-can-eat brisket. And I'm telling you, that's food, but sometimes when you smell something, it's like a feeding. And I can remember my grandparents' farm when I was 9 as we were driving through this landscape. So my brother and I get to this little rodeo. It's sort of like a little agrodome, like a little stadium where they're holding the rattlesnake hunt. And it is advertised as the world's biggest rattlesnake roundup, because apparently there's a second biggest one somewhere, and I don't know where that is. But my brother and I walk into this rodeo, we walk into the stadium, and my brother, I'm holding his elbow, and he just stops. And Michael says to me, I don't want to exaggerate, but everything is snake. Which is a cruel thing to say to a blind person who cannot imagine what that even looks like. And so I said to him, you have to give me something to look like. Like, what are you seeing? And he said, well, right now there's an old man in front of us, and currently he's shaking a rattlesnake to entertain a baby. And the other rattlesnake he's holding, he's not shaking that one. Now, I knew this was a bad idea. This was going to be a really bad idea. But I will tell you this. In my experience in this world, the best experiences never invite you. So we pressed on. We go down into the stadium, and down in sort of the rodeo area, they've got this like almost like a shanty town of kiosks and things where they were selling everything made of rattlesnakes you could never imagine. I'm talking like rattlesnake skin rodeo chaps. They had belts with heads mounted on them. I even found a turtle shell that had a rattlesnake head on one end and a tail on the other, like some rejected creature from Beetlejuice. And snakes everywhere. You just hear them going by. So to calm myself down, I began to collect phrases you don't want to hear at the rattlesnake roundup, but I heard. I'll give them to you. Number 1, oh crap. Like, I don't care if you dropped your brisket, you don't want to hear that at a rattlesnake roundup at any time, under any circumstance. Number 2, back up, back up, back up. And number 3, yeah, that's how fast it can happen. I said to my brother, I don't know if I want to do this. Because we had a plan. We were going to go out and join the hunt the next day. We were going to go catch a rattlesnake. A blind guy going to go catch a rattlesnake because we thought, yeah, that's going to be a good idea. So we had to go to the back of the rodeo area there where they had this table to get a license and sign up and all that stuff. We knew it was by this fountain, so we walked towards it. And then I realized as we got closer, this isn't a fountain. What I was hearing was the rattlesnake transfer pen. It's like a little swimming pool about waist high, right, of like wooden sides. And inside it, it is filled at any time with maybe 300, 500, 700 rattlesnakes that they are going to skin, take the venom from to make the anti-venom, so on and so forth. Basically, if you remember Raiders of the Lost Ark, do you know what I'm talking about? There's the whole sequence in the crypt at the end with all, that's what it was. It was all those snakes in that crypt. So I got towards the edge of this thing, and rattlesnakes can sense a shift in temperature of a fraction of a Fahrenheit. And so as I got closer, they got louder. And so I stepped back, and they got quieter. So I leaned in forward again, and they got louder, and I stepped back again, and I played a pile of rattlesnakes like a theremin. How was your holiday? The next day, my brother and I go out on the hunt. We go out to this like 9,000 acre cattle ranch. We're going with about 6 or 7 other people. And the hunt is gonna be led by a guy named Jeb, who had a massive silver beard and a couple boys with him. And he gave us the first instructions. We had to have our gear to hunt a rattlesnake. The gear is, first you have to have a snake hook, which is actually a golf club. And they cut the head off the golf club and they weld an Allen wrench from IKEA on the end. It's a sophisticated operation. Number 2, you want a Rubbermaid bin with a very, very secure lid. And third, you get a hand mirror. And then Jeb gave us our only instructions for the day. He said, "They are everywhere. You will keep your eyes down at all times." My brother leans over to me and whispers, he goes, "You're so screwed." When you find your snake, you will approach it with your boot up. You will get your snake hook, you will get in there and you will provoke it. It will strike at the bottom of your boot, you will put your hook down on its head, then you'll pick it up, put it in your bin, put the lid on it. Which I thought was going through a lot of steps way too quick. And then somebody said, I read somewhere that if you don't have your pants tucked into your boots, that they might get your pant leg and then they get stuck on it and they got their teeth in it and then they're hanging off your pant leg like a ball and chain. Is that true? And Jeb says, I'd say that'd be about so. And you've never seen people tuck their pants into boots that fast at the Gap in your life. Every pair of pants was going to every pair of boots. And Jeb said, good luck. And we were off. So my brother and I start taking large, soft astronaut steps into this desert landscape to look for rattlesnakes, which are reputedly everywhere. My brother leans over to me and goes, I am so scared. And we discovered this weird audio fact of the world that I didn't know, which is that tall, dead scrub grass in a Texas breeze sounds exactly like a rattlesnake. You get a little gust of wind, and my brother and I would whip around and beat the crap out of the ground with a golf club. Then Michael saw it. He's like, there's a big pile of rocks over there. There's got to be one in there. I'm going to go look. He kept whispering. I don't know why. It's like he was going to sneak up on the snakes. And by the way, nobody ever told us what to do with the hand mirror. I got this hand mirror. It's like, do I scare it with its own look? So as my brother's looking for a snake in the pile of rubble, I get a tap on the shoulder. I turn around. It's this guy. I came to think of him as Mr. Coors. He's drinking beer at 8:30 in the morning. He goes, hey, man, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He goes, are you blind? I said, yeah. He goes, no, I mean, like, are you blind? And I said, yeah, and I'm Canadian. And he goes, God damn, you're the bravest son of a bitch I ever met. Bonnie, get the children. He is a blind guy. Bring the camera. We'll get some photos. Because I was about the most interesting thing anybody was finding in this desert today. So we had our little photo shoot. Me, Bonnie, and Mr. Coors, and the kids. As my brother is still digging around in the pile of rocks, we hear Jeb shout over the desert landscape, "Get your hands away from there." My brother's like, "I am so done." So we walk down, we go about a quarter mile down this corduroy road. We find this old shack, and there's like piles of lumber, and there's an old car body. You just know there's snakes. And nobody's found one yet, so we are racing. Everybody is now competing. It's like we're storming Normandy. I'm going to get the snake. We round the corner of this little shack. I'm walking beside Bonnie, and then I hear her say it. She says to Mr. Coors, her husband, "Hank, get it." And he says, "I'm not getting it. You get it." She goes, "I don't have the hook, Hank." And then I hear it, and this snake lights up right in front of me. And then I heard the most terrifying sound I've ever heard in this world. It went silent. And I don't know where to go. And it turns out later, I found out, the reason it went silent is because it was leaping up into the air to try and take off Bonnie's face. It missed, and then I heard my brother shout, "It's for real." The boys start calling Jeb, "Daddy, it's a big one." And then this snake booked it under this little shack, and I heard the coolest thing. Its tail hit the wooden floorboards underneath, like a kid dragging a stick on a fence. They all spent about 20 minutes trying to get this thing to come back out. And I just kind of got disgusted with the whole thing. I'm like, what am I doing here? This is stupid. This snake has evolved for millennia, and it can make one sound. And that one sound is to tell you, "I'm here, leave me alone." So I decided I was done. We turned away. I started walking back through the crowd, and then I heard familiar phrases that I know. Somebody says, "Oh, crap." A bunch of people go, "Back up, back up, back up." And you know somebody's thinking, as they're looking at me, "Yeah, that's how fast it can happen." So my brother's not to be deterred. I don't need to remind you about how he spells his name. He's like, "No, we're going to do it. You're going to feel a snake. We're going to figure this out." So we go back to the rodeo, and we discovered there is a power. It is a magic power that if you tell people that you are blind and you are from Canada, you can do anything you want. I judged the rattlesnake cook-off. I rode mechanical bulls. People gave me their guns and let me shoot them, just aiming my shoulders. Because who's to discriminate? And then my brother found the pinnacle, the greatest thing ever. The Miss Sweetwater Snake Charmer Beauty Pageant. Women in large hair with white paper hazmat suits answering questions about world peace as they skin rattlesnakes. Blind guy from Canada is now entered into the Snake Charmer Beauty Pageant. And he did not win, but he did skin a rattlesnake, and he felt the beating heart of one in his hand. What I didn't expect was that the women competing, when they were finished skinning their snakes, would take their palms and press them behind us on the white wall and then write their names, like Carrie with a heart over the eye. This is why I don't write novels, because the world is that weird. You don't have to make anything up. What's the takeaway? The takeaway is not a lesson for you about rattlesnakes, nor to tell you, please don't go and skin rattlesnakes in beauty pageants in Canada. That's somebody else's practice. But what my takeaway is this for you. It's this. I want you to think for a moment about what a story is. Because we tell them all the time, but rarely do we ask the question, what is a story? And I submit this to you. A story is a unit of measurement. We collect them over a lifetime. We take chunks of our lives and we carve them up into beginnings, middles, and ends. And the question is, why? What are we measuring with our stories? And I'll tell you this, I don't think what we measure is the success of our lives. I don't think we measure the failures of our lives. Stories are the measure of the mileage we've traveled. And at one point in my life, I looked into my future and it was very dark. And the way I cured that was to fill it with stories. So I submit this to you, as my mentor had said to me, go out there and live an anecdotally rich life. It might save you. Thank you.